Jake Carter had spent years trying to forget his past. After serving in the military, he settled on a quiet colony planet far from the front lines of war. He worked as a mechanic, fixing anything from broken-down Land Rovers to malfunctioning starships. His life had become simple, peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos he'd once known. But peace doesn't last forever, and that quiet life was about to be shattered. It all started on a cool, starry night. Jake had just finished a long day at the workshop and was sitting outside, enjoying the calm. The night sky was dotted with bright stars, the kind of view that made you forget about the weight of the galaxy's problems. He had a cup of coffee in his hand, the bitter taste warming him up after a long day of sweat and grease. Then a sudden flash of light caught his eye. It was too bright to be a normal star, too fast to be a passing comet. The light streaked across the sky, disappearing behind a mountain range not far from his workshop. It wasn't long before he heard a distant crash, a loud, booming noise that rattled the ground beneath his feet. Jake stood up quickly, his heart racing. That wasn't normal. No one should be out there in the mountains at this hour, especially not with such a crash. Without thinking, he grabbed his jacket and headed toward the source of the noise. The journey through the dense trees and rocky paths was difficult, but Jake's years in the military had prepared him for tough terrain. After about half an hour of hiking, he reached the crash site. It wasn't a meteor, as he had first thought. It was a ship, a small, sleek craft, its hull smoking and bent from the impact. There were no signs of life around, no other ships or vehicles, only the remains of the wreck. Jake approached cautiously, scanning the area for any movement. The ship was strange, unlike anything he had seen before. It didn't belong to any human faction. Suddenly, he heard a soft groan. Jake froze, his senses on alert. Someone was alive. He moved closer, finding a small figure lying beside the wreckage. It was a girl, an alien girl. Her skin was pale with a faint blue tint, and her hair shimmered like silver under the moonlight. Her clothes were torn, and she looked injured, but she was still breathing. Without thinking, Jake dropped to his knees beside her. She was barely conscious, her breathing shallow. He checked for injuries, broken limbs, cuts, bruises, but nothing seemed fatal. But there was something about her. Something unsettling. He didn't know what it was, but he knew she wasn't just any ordinary alien. "Hey," he said softly, trying to wake her up. "Can you hear me? Are you all right?" Her eyes fluttered open for a moment, and she looked at him with confusion and fear. Her voice was weak, but Jake could hear the desperation in it. "Please, help me," she whispered, her accent strange, unfamiliar. "They're coming for me." Before Jake could ask more questions, a sudden noise broke the silence. The sound of engines, fast, powerful engines. Jake's heart skipped a beat. Someone else was coming. Whoever they were after her. Jake didn't hesitate. He picked her up carefully, supporting her weight as best as he could. His mind raced. He had to get her out of here before whatever was chasing her arrived. He scanned the area and saw a small hidden trail that led back to the town, a path that only a few locals knew. It would be risky, but it was the best option. He started moving quickly, carrying the alien girl in his arms, trying to keep low and avoid detection. As he moved through the trees, he could hear the engines growing louder. They were getting closer. Jake's military instincts kicked in. He wasn't going to let anyone get to her, not if he could help it. After what felt like an eternity, Jake reached the edge of the forest and finally emerged into the outskirts of the town. He quickly made his way to his small workshop, hoping no one had seen him. The last thing he wanted was for anyone to know he was carrying an injured alien. He had no idea who she was or why she was here. But one thing was certain. She wasn't safe. Inside the workshop, Jake carefully set her down on a makeshift cot. Her breathing had slowed, but she still looked weak. He checked her wounds again and started to clean them with what he had on hand. His mind raced. Who was after her, and why? It wasn't long before the door to the workshop creaked open. Jake turned sharply, ready to defend himself if necessary, but it was only Lily, his neighbor and friend. She was a mechanic too, and they often helped each other out with repairs. "What happened?" Lily asked, her voice filled with concern as she looked at the alien girl. "Is she—" "She crashed," Jake said quickly, not wanting to reveal too much. "She's hurt. I'm just trying to help her." Lily nodded but looked skeptical. "This doesn't look like a normal crash. What kind of ship was it?" Jake shrugged, trying to keep things casual. "I don't know. I've never seen anything like it." Lily stepped closer, examining the girl. "She doesn't look human." "No," Jake replied, his voice low. "She's not." Lily stayed silent for a moment, her eyes narrowing as she looked at the alien girl. Then she turned back to Jake. "You know, if someone's looking for her, this could be trouble. Are you sure you want to get involved?" Jake hesitated. He had no idea what he was getting himself into, but one thing was clear. This girl, Zara, needed his help, and he wasn't going to turn his back on her. "I don't have a choice," he said firmly. Lily raised an eyebrow. "All right, but be careful. If they're coming for her, they won't stop until they get what they want." As the hours passed, Jake worked in silence, keeping an eye on the girl and trying to figure out his next move. But the sound of engines in the distance, faint but unmistakable, reminded him that danger was closing in. Whoever was after her wasn't far behind. Zara stirred once more, her eyes flickering open. She looked at Jake, her expression filled with fear. They'll find me," she whispered, her voice shaking. Jake sat down beside her, trying to offer comfort, though he had no idea how. "I won't let them hurt you," he promised. But deep down, Jake knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Whoever was after Zara was powerful, and if they wanted her that badly, it could only mean one thing. She was far more important than anyone could imagine. The first few days after Zara's crash were a blur of confusion and questions. Jake did his best to keep her comfortable. But every time she woke up, it was clear she was fighting against something in her mind. Her memories were fragmented, scattered like broken pieces of a puzzle. Sometimes she would speak, but it was always unclear, her voice filled with fear and urgency. Jake spent most of his time trying to fix the ship she had arrived in. It wasn't easy. Her craft was beyond damaged and parts were missing, but there was something about it that called to him, as if the ship held secrets that he wasn't yet ready to understand. He worked in silence, his thoughts heavy with the knowledge that someone or something was coming after Zara. He could feel it. He had spent enough time in the military to know when he was being hunted. Zara's condition began to improve slowly. Her body healed, but her mind was a different matter. She would often sit up in bed, staring blankly at the wall as if seeing something only she could understand. When Jake would ask her what she remembered, she would shake her head, her face twisted in confusion. The only words she could speak clearly were always the same. "They're coming for me. You have to protect me." Jake had no idea who they were, but one thing was clear. He couldn't protect her forever. The small workshop was a poor hiding place, and the longer she stayed, the more dangerous it would become. On the fourth day after the crash, Jake was sitting at his workbench, trying to repair a part for a local freighter, when Zara came into the room. She was still weak, but she was moving more freely now. She looked at him with those strange, wide eyes, as if she was seeing him for the first time. "Jake," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. "You don't understand. My memories, they're not just memories. They're a weapon." Jake stopped what he was doing and turned to face her. "What do you mean? What kind of weapon?" She shook her head, frustration clouding her face. "I don't remember everything, but I remember enough. My people, we had the ability to control technology with our minds. We could manipulate things, unlock secrets hidden in the stars, but we were destroyed, wiped out because of it. Jake's heart raced. He didn't know what to think. Who destroyed you? She looked down, her eyes clouding with grief. I don't know. It was chaos. A war. We were hunted down, but before we were destroyed, they took the most important thing of all, our memories. Jake stepped closer, his voice low. Your memories? But you don't even remember them. Zara's eyes filled with tears. I don't, but they're in here. She pointed to her head. The memories are locked inside me, and if someone bad, unlocks them, they can use that power to control everything. They'll be unstoppable. Jake felt the weight of her words settle in. Whoever was after Zara didn't just want her, they wanted her memories. If they got hold of them, they could control technology and minds in ways Jake couldn't even begin to understand. How can we stop them? Jake asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Zara's eyes filled with panic. I don't know. I'm trying to hold it together, but the memories are coming back. Pieces of them. But I can't control it. The more I remember, the more dangerous I become. Jake was silent for a moment, trying to process what Zara had just said. If her memories were a weapon, then they were in even more danger than he had thought, and he couldn't let her fall into the wrong hands. I won't let them take you, Jake said finally, his voice full of determination. Zara smiled weakly, but there was little comfort in it. I don't know how long I can keep the memories locked inside. The more they push, the more I remember. The more I remember, the more powerful I become. And if I lose control... Jake didn't want to think about that. The thought of Zara unleashing her powers in a fit of panic sent a chill through him. But they couldn't stay here forever. It wasn't safe. We have to get out of here, Jake said firmly. We can't stay in this town. It's too small, too easy to find us. Zara nodded slowly. I know. But where will we go? Jake looked around the workshop. He needed a plan, and fast. He couldn't just run. The mercenaries who were after Zara would track her down no matter where they went. They were too powerful, too well-equipped. Jake had learned that the hard way. There's a place, Jake said, as an idea began to form in his mind. A safe zone, far out in the outer rim. It's a long way off, but it's the only place I can think of where we might be able to hide. Zara's eyes widened. The outer rim? That's dangerous. I know, Jake said, but we don't have a choice. For the next few days, Jake prepared for the journey. He gathered supplies, made repairs to his old starship, and tried to get everything in order. The trip to the outer rim wouldn't be easy. It would take weeks, maybe longer, to get there, and the whole time, they would be running. Running from mercenaries, running from the past, running from the memories that Zara couldn't control. On the 7th day after Zara's crash, they finally left. Jake piloted the ship, with Zara sitting beside him in silence. She had grown stronger, but her mind was still fragile. Every now and then, she would look out the window at the stars, lost in her own thoughts. They jumped from one star system to another, using the fastest routes Jake knew. The journey was exhausting, but it was the only option they had. They didn't speak much, but they didn't need to. The tension between them was enough to fill the quiet spaces. Late one night, as they neared the edge of a system, Jake noticed something in the distance. A small fleet of ships, moving fast. He froze, his heart sinking. He knew what that meant. They were here. Zara stood up, her face pale. They've found us. Jake gritted his teeth. We have to keep moving. He slammed his hand onto the controls, pushing the ship into high speed. But the mercenaries were faster. They had the advantage: bigger ships, better weapons, and the full support of whoever was behind them. Jake couldn't outrun them for long. The first blast hit the ship hard, sending them both tumbling. Alarms went off and the ship shook violently. Jake quickly regained control, but the damage was done. The mercenaries had found them, and they weren't going to let go. "We can't stop them," Zara whispered, fear creeping into her voice. "We don't have to," Jake replied. "We just have to keep them from getting to you." But even as he said those words, he knew that he was running out of time. They were closing in, and there was nowhere left to hide. The stars streaked past the ship as Jake pushed the controls to their limit. The mercenaries were closing in fast. He could hear the hum of the ship's engines straining, the metal groaning under the pressure. Jake's hands gripped the controls, sweat dripping from his brow. He was no stranger to danger, but this was different. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about keeping Zara safe. "We can't outrun them," Zara said, her voice shaking as she sat beside Jake. Her eyes darted nervously between the window and the control panel, watching the enemy ships getting closer. "I know," Jake replied, his jaw set with determination. He was already calculating their next move. He had to think fast, or they were done for. "But we're going to make them work for it." The mercenaries' ships were fast. Too fast. They were bigger, more heavily armed, and they had the advantage of numbers. There were 3 of them, all sleek and deadly, cutting through space like predators closing in on their prey. Jake had always been a fighter, but now he was something else. He was a protector. Zara's safety was his only focus. "Hold on," Jake said, taking a deep breath. He slammed the controls to one side, sending the ship into a sharp turn. The sudden movement jolted Zara forward, but she quickly steadied herself, her eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. She knew what Jake was doing. He was trying to buy them some time. Jake's ship, an old, beat-up model, didn't stand a chance against the mercenaries' superior technology. But Jake wasn't going to let that stop him. He knew these ships, these routes. He had been flying through this sector for years, and that gave him an edge. The trick was staying one step ahead. Zara grabbed onto the edge of her seat as the ship rocked with another blast. The mercenaries were getting closer, and their weapons were starting to hit their mark. Sparks flew from one of the ship's consoles, and Jake cursed under his breath. They couldn't take much more of this. "They're too close," Zara said, her voice filled with panic. "We have to make the jump," Jake said, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "Stay calm, Zara. I need you to trust me." Zara nodded, but her face was pale. She wasn't used to this kind of danger. She had never had to run from anything before, never had to fear for her life. But she knew one thing: she couldn't let the mercenaries get to her. If they did, it would be the end for everyone. Jake's fingers flew over the control panel, punching in coordinates. He had to time this just right. The jump was risky. It always was. But it was their only chance. The ship's engines roared to life, but the strain on them was too much. The mercenaries were closing in fast, firing another round of blasts. "Now!" Jake shouted, slamming his hand down on the jump lever. The ship lurched violently as it entered the jump, the stars outside stretching and warping into long streaks of light. Jake gritted his teeth, holding onto the controls with everything he had. Zara closed her eyes, her body pressed back into the seat as the ship was hurled across the galaxy. When the jump finally ended, the ship dropped out of hyperspace with a violent jolt. The stars outside returned to normal. But Jake didn't relax. He immediately began scanning for any signs of pursuit. It took only a moment before he saw them. The mercenaries had followed them through the jump, their ships appearing just a few hundred miles behind. "They're still on us," Zara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're not out of danger yet," Jake replied, his hands steady on the controls. "But we bought ourselves some time." He punched in a new course, heading for a nearby asteroid belt. The dense field of rocks would give them a place to hide. If they could lose the mercenaries in there, they might have a chance to breathe. As they approached the asteroid belt, Jake's mind raced. He knew the belt well. He had flown through it countless times in his military days. The twisting, winding paths between the asteroids could be their saving grace. But it would be dangerous. One wrong move, and they could end up colliding with an asteroid or getting stuck in the debris. "We need to be quick," Jake muttered. He veered the ship toward the belt, dodging a large rock that shot past them at high speed. Zara gasped, holding onto her seat as the ship navigated through the maze of asteroids. Jake's hands were precise on the controls, guiding the ship through the narrow gaps between massive rocks. He was calculating every move, every turn, but even with his experience, he could feel the pressure mounting. The mercenaries were still behind them, and they were closing in faster than Jake had hoped. The asteroid belt was dense, and Jake knew the mercenaries wouldn't be able to maneuver as easily as he could. But they weren't the only threat. Zara's memories, her powers, were still growing stronger, and that worried Jake. With every passing minute, she was getting more dangerous, and he wasn't sure if he could protect her from herself. "We need to get out of here," Zara said, her voice trembling. "They're going to find us." "We're not going to let that happen," Jake replied. "Just stay with me, Zara. I'm going to get us out of this." The ship flew through the asteroid field, dodging rocks, weaving in and out of narrow gaps. Jake's pulse was racing. He had been in tough situations before, but nothing like this. This wasn't just a fight for survival. This was a fight to keep someone alive, someone who didn't even fully understand the power they held. They made it deeper into the field, the mercenaries following them closely, their ships weaving through the rocks in pursuit. But Jake was the better pilot. He knew the field better, and he had one advantage. They didn't. Jake looked over at Zara. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. But there was something else there too, something different. As they raced through the asteroids, he saw a flicker of light in her eyes, a spark of something more. She was starting to remember, starting to tap into the power inside her. Jake could feel the ship shudder as if it too sensed the change in Zara. "Jake," Zara said suddenly, her voice distant. "I can feel it. The power. It's inside me." Jake's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? What's happening?" She closed her eyes, her body tense. "I can hear them. The memories. They're all coming back. I can control it. I can control everything." Before Jake could react, a bright light exploded from the ship's control panel. A shockwave rippled through the ship, knocking them both forward. The ship veered off course, slamming into an asteroid before bouncing back into the debris field. "We're losing control!" Jake shouted, trying to steady the ship. But it was too late. The mercenaries were closing in. Their weapons were locked on, and there was nowhere to hide. Jake's mind raced. They had one final option. He had to make a decision, and fast. But what could he do? They were trapped in the asteroid field, with no way out, and Zara's powers were only growing stronger. Jake's hands were shaking as he struggled to regain control of the ship. The mercenaries were closing in fast, and the asteroid field was becoming more of a trap than a refuge. Zara's powers were growing stronger, and the ship was starting to show signs of stress, as if it, too, could sense the chaos inside her. "We need to get out of here!" Jake shouted, his voice tight with panic. His eyes flickered to the control panel, which was sparking with static, barely functioning. The mercenaries' ships were now too close. He could see their weapons charging, ready to fire. "We can't outrun them," Zara said, her voice distant as she stared ahead, her eyes glazed over. "I can feel them coming. I can feel them inside me." Jake looked at her, his heart sinking. He had hoped that the asteroid field would give them some time, some chance to regroup. But now, with Zara's powers growing stronger, it seemed like they were running out of options. The ship lurched again as another blast hit the hull, sending vibrations through the metal. Jake gritted his teeth, cursing under his breath. "Hang on!" Before he could take evasive action, something unexpected happened. Zara's body went rigid, her hands clutching the sides of her seat. A strange, soft glow began to surround her, her skin lighting up in a way Jake hadn't seen before. Zara looked up at him, her eyes filled with a strange calm. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Jake's stomach dropped. "What do you mean, sorry?" "I've been hiding something from you," Zara said, her voice trembling with the weight of the truth. "The memories, they're not just a weapon, they're a key to unlocking something that was never meant to be found." Jake's heart raced. "What do you mean, a key? What are you talking about?" Zara closed her eyes, her face filled with pain. "Before my people were wiped out, we discovered something that could change the galaxy. We unlocked the power to control minds, to control entire civilizations, to bend the fabric of space itself. But we realized too late that such power would destroy us. So, we locked it away, and my people, our people, took measures to protect it." Jake's head spun. This was bigger than he had ever imagined. He had known Zara was special, but he hadn't known the full extent of her abilities, the full weight of the danger they were in. "You mean your people?" Jake's voice trailed off, struggling to understand. Zara nodded slowly. "My memories hold that power, Jake. They were hidden away in me, in my mind. But they're not just memories. They're a blueprint, a guide, and whoever controls them can control everything. My people were trying to keep it buried. But now, I can feel it. I can feel the power inside me, and it's growing." Jake swallowed hard. "That's why they're after you. The mercenaries, they want to use your memories to unlock that power." Zara nodded again, her eyes filled with guilt. "Yes, but it's not just them. There's someone else, someone much more dangerous." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "Who?" Zara hesitated, her face darkening. "The leader of the mercenaries, Caleb Vance. He's not just after me. He's after my memories, and he's been hunting me for a long time. But the truth is, he's not just a mercenary. He's working for someone even more powerful." Jake felt his breath catch in his throat. "Who?" Zara's voice dropped to a whisper. "The Empire." Jake's mind raced. The Empire. A powerful, ruthless organization that controlled vast stretches of the galaxy. If they were involved, things were far worse than he had imagined. The Empire wasn't just interested in conquering planets. They were interested in controlling everything. And now, they wanted Zara's memories to complete their plans. "What are we going to do?" Jake asked, his voice tight with worry. "How do we stop them?" Zara's eyes flickered with fear. "I don't know. But I have to keep my memories locked away. If I lose control of them, if they unlock the power inside me, it will be the end of everything." Jake's thoughts raced. He couldn't let that happen. He couldn't let Zara be the one to destroy everything. But he also knew they couldn't keep running forever. The mercenaries, Caleb, the Empire, they were all closing in. He had to make a decision, and he had to make it fast. Just then, the ship shook violently as another blast hit the hull. Jake glanced at the control panel, which was now flashing red, warning of critical damage. The mercenaries were getting closer, and they were not going to stop. "We don't have much time," Jake said, his voice grim. "We have to do something now. We can't just keep running." Zara looked at him, her eyes filled with fear and desperation. "What do you mean?" "We need to get to a place where we can hide, where they can't find us," Jake said, thinking quickly. "I know a place. It's a deep space station, hidden from the rest of the galaxy. It's far enough out of the way that even the Empire won't know about it." Zara stared at him, confused. "How do you know about this place?" Jake hesitated. He hadn't wanted to tell her the truth, not yet. But now there was no time to hide it. "I used to be a part of an underground network," Jake said quietly. "Before I left the military, I helped transport people to hidden places, places that the Empire couldn't reach. I know how to get us there, but it's not going to be easy. It's risky, and we'll have to move fast." Zara's expression softened, but there was still fear in her eyes. "Will it be enough?" Jake didn't know, but it was the only chance they had. "It's the best shot we've got." With no time to waste, Jake set the ship's course, heading for the hidden station. But as he engaged the thrusters, something unexpected happened. The ship's systems began to fail, flickering as if something, or someone, was interfering with them. Zara's powers were reaching a critical point. She was losing control. "I can't hold it back," Zara said, her voice trembling. "I can feel them, feel everything. It's too much." Jake glanced at her in alarm. "Zara, you have to focus. You need to control it. We can't let them get to you." But it was too late. The ship was no longer responding to Jake's commands. The engines sputtered and the lights flickered. Zara's powers were tearing through the systems, and there was nothing Jake could do to stop it. And then, just as quickly as it had started, everything went silent. Jake's heart skipped a beat. He turned to Zara, who was slumped in her seat, her eyes closed. Her body was glowing softly, her powers radiating from her like a dangerous force. "We're not going to make it," Zara whispered, her voice filled with regret. Jake's thoughts raced. The Empire, Caleb, and now Zara herself. Their only hope was slipping away, and he didn't know how to save her. Or them. But he couldn't give up. He couldn't let her sacrifice herself. "Hold on," Jake said, his voice firm. "We're not done yet." The ship hung still in space, suspended like a forgotten relic, its engines quiet, the lights dim. Jake's hands were gripping the controls, but nothing was responding. Zara was unconscious, her body glowing faintly with the remnants of the powers she could no longer control. The ship, once a place of refuge, was now a cage, trapped between the mercenaries who were closing in and the unstable power of Zara's memories. Jake sat still, his mind racing. The mercenaries weren't far behind. They had found them again, and this time it was different. They knew where Zara was. They knew what she was. And now, they weren't just coming to capture her. They were coming to take everything. The calm, cool voice of Caleb Vance, the leader of the mercenaries, came through the ship's broken communications system. "You can't hide forever, Jake. We know where you are. Come out and we can make this easy. Keep her hidden, and we'll burn this ship to the ground." Jake's heart pounded in his chest. The mercenaries were relentless. He knew Caleb wasn't going to give up. They wanted Zara's memories. They wanted the power she held inside her, and they would stop at nothing to get it. But Jake wasn't going to give in. He couldn't. He glanced over at Zara, lying unconscious in the seat, the power that had been radiating from her now quiet. She was still there, still alive, but the danger was far from over. "I won't let you have her," Jake muttered under his breath. He stood up, moving toward Zara. Her eyes fluttered open for a moment, and she looked up at him, weak and tired. "Jake, you need to go," Zara whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's too late. I can't control it anymore. If they get to me, they'll unlock it. We're not giving up," Jake said, cutting her off. His voice was strong, full of determination. "We're not running. I'm not going to leave you." Zara's eyes filled with tears, and she nodded weakly. "I trust you." But as the words left her lips, the ship jolted violently. The mercenaries had fired again. The hull creaked under the pressure, and Jake's heart sank. There wasn't much time left. He needed a plan, and fast. Jake's mind raced, recalling every bit of training he had. He had been in tight spots before, too many to count, but nothing like this. This wasn't just about getting out alive. This was about stopping the Empire, stopping Caleb and stopping the destruction of everything Zara was meant to protect. He took a deep breath and began to work. He quickly scanned the ship's systems, trying to restore enough power to the weapons. There was no time for finesse. The ship wasn't going to last much longer. He had to act fast. Zara stirred beside him. "Jake, the memories, they're growing stronger," she said, her voice full of fear. "I can feel them. I can feel the power." "Focus, Zara," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We're going to make it through this. I need you to help me." She nodded, her eyes squeezing shut as she struggled to hold on to the memories that were starting to rise to the surface. Jake could see the strain on her face, the pain she was enduring, but there was no turning back now. They were out of options. The mercenaries' ships were closing in. Jake could see them on the scanners, 3 ships circling, waiting for him to make a move. He couldn't escape them, not now, not with Zara in her current state. Jake slammed his fist against the control panel in frustration. Then, an idea hit him. It was risky. It was dangerous. But it might just work. "Zara," Jake said, his voice sharp, "I need you to release everything. Everything you've been holding back. You need to trust me. I need your power to save us." Zara's eyes flickered open, filled with fear. "Jake, I can't. If I let go, if I lose control, I could—" "You can do this," Jake interrupted. "You have to trust me. I won't let them take you. I won't let them win." Zara stared at him for a long moment, her face full of uncertainty. But slowly, she nodded. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath, and let go. The ship shook violently, and the air crackled with the force of Zara's powers. For a moment, everything went dark, and then a bright light engulfed the room. Jake held onto the controls, his heart pounding as the ship began to hum with energy. He could feel the power radiating from Zara, feel the strength of her memories rising to the surface. The ship itself seemed to come alive, its systems powering up in ways Jake couldn't explain. But it was working. The ship was responding. "Do it now!" Jake shouted, his voice barely audible over the roar of the ship's systems. "Fire the weapons!" Zara opened her eyes, her expression a mix of concentration and fear. "I don't know if I can—" "You can!" Jake shouted, his voice filled with urgency. "Just focus! We need to take them down!" Zara nodded, her hands shaking as she reached out, her fingers brushing the controls. The ship's weapons powered up, and with a blast of energy, the first mercenary ship exploded in a burst of light. The shockwave rattled the ship, but Jake held on, determined to keep them steady. "2 more!" Jake shouted. "We can do this!" But Zara was already starting to lose control. Her eyes were wide with panic as the memories flooded her mind. She could feel them, could hear the whispers of her people. She was losing herself to the power, and it was terrifying. "Zara!" Jake called out, his voice desperate. "Focus! You have to focus!" But it was too late. The second mercenary ship fired, and the blast hit the ship's hull, sending them spiraling out of control. Jake fought to regain control, but the ship was too damaged. They were going down. "Zara!" Jake shouted again. "Do you trust me?" Zara's eyes locked with his, filled with fear. "Yes." "Then hold on," Jake said, his voice full of resolve. "We're going to make it." With a final push, Jake pulled the ship out of its spin, sending them hurtling straight toward the remaining mercenary ship. The ship's weapons fired again, and with a final burst of energy, the last mercenary ship exploded in a shower of debris. Silence fell over the ship as it coasted through space, drifting with no real direction. Zara was slumped in her seat, her body still glowing faintly, but the power had drained from her. Jake took a deep breath, his heart still racing from the battle. "We did it," Zara whispered, her voice barely above a whisper. "We stopped them." Jake nodded, his face tired but determined. "For now." "But there's still a long way to go." Zara looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Jake. You saved me." Jake's expression softened. I didn't do it alone. We saved each other. The ship floated in the darkness of space, the threat gone, for now. But the galaxy was vast, and the dangers were far from over. Jake knew they had won this battle, but the war was far from over. There were more enemies out there and more secrets to uncover. But for the first time in a long while, Jake felt hope. Together, he and Zara could face whatever came next.